The Bermuda Triangle, a broad swath of sea and land starting near the tip of Florida and covering countless islands. It holds great beauty and great terror. Countless strange incidents and mysterious disappearances have been recorded in these waters. Here are 10 of the most bizarre. Number 10. The SS Cotopaxi. It was 1918 when the mighty ship launched. It was a bulk carrier built as part of the World War I emergency shipbuilding program. Its history was troubled, with it suffering serious damage when it collided with a tugboat near Brazil, but it was a strong ship and was repaired and continued sailing, even amid some concerns about its seaworthiness. It would sail for 7 years, until one fateful trip from Charleston to Havana in 1925. It carried coal and a cargo of 32 men and then suddenly sent out a distress signal, warning that it was taking on water amid a storm. It was New Year's Eve when it was awaited in port, but it never arrived. The ship was first marked as overdue and then as missing. No trace of the ship was found for decades, and many attributed it to the harsh weather conditions, but others spoke of the history of missing ships at sea. It would be 6 decades later when a mysterious wreck would be found off St. Augustine, Florida. It was badly damaged and no one knew which ship it was, and it was given the simple name the Bear Wreck. But one scientist worked doggedly for years, and in 2020, the last remnants of the SS Cotopaxi were identified. It had been found, but as for what sunk it, those secrets were lost in its watery grave. But sometimes the survivors of the Bermuda Triangle are left wondering how close they came. Number 9. Turkish Airlines TK-183. It was a powerful modern Airbus in the year 2017 sailing over the Atlantic from Turkey to its destination, Havana, Cuba. For the hundreds of people on board, it had been a routine flight as they approached the Caribbean, but it wasn't going to stay that way. As soon as the plane approached the mysterious triangle, things started to go wrong. The airline reported problems with their left-hand engine, and after some attempts to fix the problem, they made the decision to divert the plane to Washington, D.C., where it landed safely. The end of the story? Not quite. While the official airline report is that it was a mechanical problem that was later resolved, passengers reported much odder events. As soon as they entered the Bermuda Triangle, they started experiencing electrical problems. Their in-flight TV screen started flickering and then shut down. The emergency lighting on the floor lit up as if they were about to crash. Many people wondered just how close they became to being the latest victims of the Bermuda Triangle and whether the airline was covering up the truth. Sometimes the Bermuda Triangle combines with natural disasters, and the results are deadly. Number 8. The SS El Faro. The SS El Faro had a long history as a cargo ship, sailing for 40 years between 1975 and 2015 under 3 names. But when it set sail from Jacksonville to Puerto Rico with 33 aboard, it was testing fate because Hurricane Joaquin was bearing down on the region. It was only a tropical storm when the ship set off, and the captain had charted a course away from the hurricane. The company reviewed it and deemed it safe, but many of the crew believed they were heading off to their doom. They were right. The ship was old, often called a rust bucket, and when the hurricane started to track southwest, the ship wound up directly in its path. While the original path was safer, the captain decided to head for a faster route directly into the storm. The Coast Guard received a message that the ship was in trouble and taking on water, and then, aside from a single ping from its radar, it was never heard from again. A search was conducted and debris was found indicating the ship's final resting place. What caused a veteran captain to take such reckless measures that led to the ship's end? In the Bermuda Triangle, no one's sure. Not all disasters in the Bermuda Triangle are large-scale. Some minor ones are just as mysterious. Number 7. The Missing Boys. Perry Cohen and Austin Stefanos were best friends, and the 14-year-olds loved one thing more than any other: fishing. They lived in Florida, and they would frequently sail out to sea in search of a bigger catch. They borrowed a boat belonging to Stefanos' mother, which they were familiar with, and it was up to date on safety. On July 23, 2015, they decided to sail to the Bahamas, a big adventure, and texted their parents before leaving shortly before noon, just as thunderstorms were coming onto the area. The boys would leave a mysterious social media trail behind. No one knows what happened to them after they set sail. High winds and rains hit the area, and most believe the boys were simply lost in the storm. Another 2 casualties of the Bermuda Triangle, but some clues may be found in an unlikely source: Snapchat. The posts on the social media site don't last long, but their friends report ominous posts from them that day, including a chilling video of the storm heading toward them. A massive search was marshaled, but only the boat was found, with no sign of the boys. The families argued over who was responsible, leading to legal actions, but any answers were lost in the Bermuda Triangle. Not all the Bermuda Triangle secrets were found in the water. Number 6. The Lighthouse Keepers. Ever since 1859, there's been one beacon of safety for those traveling through the dangerous waters of the Bermuda Triangle, accessible only by boat: Great Isaac Lighthouse is an isolated landmark in the Triangle and is guarded by loyal keepers who keep watch and shine a light to help ships find their way safely. At least they did for 110 years. On August 4, 1969, those arriving at the lighthouse found something disturbing. The lighthouse was deserted, with no sign of their keepers. Where did they go? Some believed they simply abandoned their post heading off to the mainland, but no one ever heard from them again. Others believed they were victims of Hurricane Anna, a powerful storm that came close to the island. Perhaps they were outside at the time and were swept out to sea. But others believed something more sinister, that whatever force kept claiming ships and planes in the Bermuda Triangle had claimed them too. No answers were ever found, and today the lighthouse stands abandoned, attracting tourists to its derelict grounds. For those believing in supernatural threats, this next incident's name should have been a clue. Number 5. Witchcraft. Dan Barak was a wealthy man, a hotel owner, and a fan of yachts. He liked few things more than being on the open sea, and he invited his friend, Father Patrick Horgan, to join him for a simple cruise on his yacht, named the Witchcraft. They only went a mile off the Miami coastline, excited to see the Christmas lights lighting up the city. But the short pleasure cruise would soon turn out to be anything but. When the Coast Guard received a distress call, Barak needed the boat to be towed back to shore. But it was far more than a simple mechanical issue. Barak claimed to have hit something that jammed his propeller, but he didn't consider it an emergency. He said he had flares and would use them to alert the Coast Guard, but none were seen as they approached. The Coast Guard searched that night, but no trace of the Witchcraft or its passengers was ever found. There had been no big storm that night, only a small thunderstorm, and a few people believed there was enough time for the ship to sink. Sabotage, foul play, or just another unsolved mystery of the Bermuda Triangle? The Bermuda Triangle has been the site of some of the biggest mysteries in maritime history. Number 4. Carroll A. Deering. It was 1920, and a 5-mast commercial schooner named the Carroll A. Deering set off on what was supposed to be a routine voyage. It sailed from Puerto Rico to Newport News, Virginia to pick up a cargo of coal. The captain was a decorated World War I veteran, and he fell ill and was replaced for the trip back to Brazil. It delivered its cargo without incident and set sail for Barbados for supplies. There was trouble on board, with conflict between the men and their first mate having a taste for drink, but it was bound back for Virginia. Or so everyone thought. It was January 28, 1921 when the ship was sighted again. A lighthouse keeper off North Carolina hailed it and received word that the ship had lost its anchors in a storm. The ship seemed to be behaving erratically, and it was next seen 3 days later near the shoals off Cape Hatteras, a notorious site for shipwrecks. It was wrecked and had been completely abandoned. An investigation revealed no clear answers, but there was suspicion of mutiny, piracy, or storms destroying the ship. The mystery only deepened when a disturbing message was found in a bottle. Deering captured by oil-burning boats, something like chaser, taking off everything, handcuffing crew. Crew hiding all over ship, no chance to make escape. Finder, please notify headquarters Deering. While most people believe this points to piracy, others believe something darker may be at play. And in the Bermuda Triangle, sometimes mysteries strike twice. Number 3. Star Tiger and Star Ariel. British South American Airways was a popular airline in the 1940s, and its planes were staffed by former World War II pilots. The crown jewels of their fleet were the larger versions of the Avro Tudor. But on January 28, 1948, disaster would strike. The Star Tiger boarded at Lisbon, and after some mechanical issues took to air. Poor weather forced them to make an overnight stop at the Azores, and they took off the next morning with 25 passengers. But the next day, the weather was no better, with strong winds and rain, and at some point, contact was lost. The plane disappeared without a trace, and no answers were ever found. And less than a year later, it happened again. It was January 17, 1949, when Star Tiger's sister plane Star Ariel was pressed into service to replace the damaged plane. With 13 passengers and 7 crew, it flew to Kingston, Jamaica, but never arrived. Weather was excellent, and no messages were received from the plane of distress. A search was conducted, but it had joined Star Tiger in oblivion. That was one of the incidents that kicked the fear of Bermuda Triangle into overdrive. But what could make a well-functioning plane in good weather disappear without a trace? But none of these were the worst disasters in the Bermuda Triangle's history. Number 2. The USS Cyclops. It was 1918, and coal largely kept the world running. A lot was needed, and the United States had ships that could haul it, the Proteus-class colliers. These massive naval ships were often named after Greek mythology, and the Cyclops would go down in history for the wrong reasons. It sailed for 7 years before its trip from Rio de Janeiro to Salvador, and it set sail again directly for Baltimore, Maryland. It hauled a full cargo of manganese ore, so much that many were worried about its safety. And they were right to be. Cyclops was rumored to be seen on March 9th but never actually arrived in Baltimore. The massive ship disappeared without a trace, and as it was wartime, suspicion fell on the Germans, notorious for sinking ships. An investigation found no link to the war and uncovered that its captain George Worley had a history of abusive behavior and possible pro-German sympathies. Many suspected that a strong storm had sent the overloaded ship to a watery grave, but the ship was never found, taking its 330 crew members to the unknown in the worst non-combat disaster in U.S. naval history. But the biggest mystery in Bermuda Triangle history wasn't a ship on the surface. Number 1. USS Scorpion. In the Cold War, top-tier submersibles were part of spycraft, and few are more powerful than the U.S. military's nuclear submarines. The USS Scorpion packed powerful missiles and engaged in missions around the world. In 1967, it went in for an overhaul, but only received emergency repairs to get it back to the sea. In 1967 and 1968, it suffered severe mechanical issues, but always survived. That is, until May 1968, when it kicked off one of the biggest mysteries in U.S. military history. How do you lose a nuclear submarine? The ship was on a mission in the Atlantic spying on Soviet ships, but it struggled to reach its base station as it headed back to Norfolk. After 6 days, the sub never reached its destination. Raising suspicion, a search crew had been marshaled 3 days before the sub was due back at port. What did the government know about the Scorpion's disappearance? It took 5 months before the Navy discovered sections of Scorpion's hull near the Azores Islands, but the sub was so damaged that there was no concrete way of finding out what caused it to fail and sink. Some think it might have been a weapons failure or a hydrogen explosion from the battery. Others blame a Soviet attack that the government covered up to keep the Cold War from turning hot. And others just see it as another in a long range of terrible incidents in the Bermuda Triangle. For more on this triangle of danger, check out 50 insane facts about the Bermuda Triangle, or watch Weirdest Unsolved Mysteries for more of Earth's greatest secrets.